conflicts that results as a difference in faith. And let's talk about it from this context right here in the country, but then move from within the country and talk about that particular topic from an African perspective. My production team sat down together and said, well, we'll have to make an introduction about this particular subject. But when we kept on going deeper and deeper to look at numbers and issues resulting from faith in conflict, it became a challenge for us to unearth those particular instances. It's a good thing that we're going to get into that particular conversation today. There are organizations that are essentially looking at achieving peace in the entire of Africa. But then they're saying, well, is it these conflicts and wars that we're seeing in Africa just not caused by politics and the difference in political ideologies, which by the way is the main reason when you look at internal and external conflicts. They're saying that, well, there's another reason, difference in faith. So this morning, let's take a look at that then, and from a very interesting perspective, we're going to speak to an organization that is looking at that particular area. That is the Christian-Muslim relations in Africa. And we are happy then to be joined by that team leader for the program for Christian-Muslim relations in Africa, Ms. Joy Wandabwa. How are you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Happy to have you around.
Good to be here.
Let's begin like this.
Sure.
When you tell people that indeed some of the conflicts that we experience within the country and Africa in general, that some of those reasons might be a difference in faith, some people look at you and say, "Hey, are you telling the truth? How bad is it?"
Well, it's happening.
Yes.
Across Africa.
Yeah.
It has happened here in Kenya, and it is something to look at and see how it can be addressed.
Yes.
Religion can indeed be a cause of conflict, and it's not a story, it's lived. In Africa, we have seen it across different countries. Look at the issue of Nigeria, Boko Haram, coming in to implicate religion.
Yes.
Sudan, back in the day, it was religious conflict.
Yes.
Look at even Israel. So what happens when religion becomes implicated in conflict?
That is insanity.
So religion is not only a source of conflict, that's what Prokmura believes in,
yes,
but it's also a source of peace. So our mission here is how can we, change that conversation, because it's happening.
That's
here in East Africa, you look at the issue of Al-Shabaab, it implicates religion. It's youth who are being, implicated, yes, or recruited by extremist groups. So violent extremism has become a large factor over the years, and the last 10 years have become more and more and more grievous. Back here in Africa and even around the world, religion has been implicated.
It's a good thing that you're talking about Prokmura.
Yes.
Am I getting it right?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
Could you then therefore do a proper introduction then of Prokmura,
yeah,
just before we get to see what you are trying to achieve and how you are technically achieving it then?
So, Program for Christian-Muslim Relations in Africa, Prokmura. It is a Pan-African Christian organization,
yes,
founded in 1959. And so we have been doing this work over the last 60 plus years, transversing across Africa, bringing religious leaders, mainly focusing, yes, on religious leaders on how they can bring peace to the world. And so we have different programs, mainly focusing on religious peace building, capacity building, youth, women, and peace issues. So our stakeholders or our constituencies look at how they can bridge peace at the community level. And why religious leaders? Because Prokmura as an organization is a Christian organization, as I said, stretching a hand of friendship to our Muslim brothers and sisters. And why so? Because Christians and Muslims are the two main dominant religions in Africa. If you look at most countries, there's always this conversation of are Christians more or are Muslims more?
Does it?
We have North Africa where we have dominant Islam, but we also have countries like where Kenya is and others who also have, claim that we have more Christians. And so that divide, when our forefathers sat back in 1960s, when we were trying to have, Africa was becoming independent. And so there was this call of why can't we have an organization that can see how these two communities, we are both Abrahamic religions, Islam and Christianity. We come from the same father. It's only that we have religious differences. But Procmora says, in spite of our religious faiths, can we sit together and work together? How do we bring that into play? We bring that into play by making sure that people, especially religious leaders, church leaders, women and youth, who are key in many of the issues around the continent, understand what we call Christian-Muslim relations. And we focus on the word relations. You cannot have dialogue before you have relations. And so you have to begin with these relations at the community level to see that the people at the grassroots, which is our communities, and when we talk about grassroots, it's the communities that we live in, it's the villages, it's the townships. So how can we make sure that people tolerate one another, especially on what is happening around us, where you can see that there's a lot of stigma, there's a lot of stereotype, there's a lot of issues when it comes to religion. So that's what Procmora has been doing across 22 African countries in Africa. We are headquartered here in Nairobi. And just like you said, people ask, is it really true that Christians and Muslims can be at peace one day?
That's it. That's what I wanted to ask you.
And is there conflict?
That's what I wanted to ask you.
Sure.
Even when you talk about Christians and Muslims, I mean, they're two distinct religions in practice. And so when you're talking about the relations, I mean, Mr. Daba, where do you start from?
Sorry?
Where do you start from
Where do we start
to look at these relations?
Well, we are not that different because, as I said, we are Christians and we have Muslims. So Procmora believes that everybody has something to bring on the table. And it's not so difficult to start off because both Islam and Christianity are Abrahamic religions. So we have a lot in common. The only thing is that if you look at the Quran and you look at the Bible, there are common things there. All these religions talk about peace. Everything, promoting peace. Islam talks about Assalamu alaikum, and that's how they greet. Peace be with you. And we say Christ is a Prince of Peace. So you can see that we have common factors, but as human beings, and just as you started before, talking about politics, economics, social, and all this, when all these things come into play, then you can start seeing that we begin to have division points. We may not necessarily agree on things, but Procmora is saying, let's promote peaceful coexistence. Be your brother's keeper. Watch out for your neighbor. We talk about good neighborliness. I am a Christian. I can talk to you about my Christian faith in a constructive way, not in the other way around. You are Muslim, you can talk to me about your faith. That is what Procmora does. Respect for one another, mutual understanding. And today, the world has changed. Even here in Kenya, my neighbor is a Muslim. There's a mosque next to me, there's a church next to me, there's all these things. But then again, there's the issue of what we call intra and inter. Christians, we have a lot of churches. For example, we have denominations, we have Anglicans, we have Catholics, we have all this. Sometimes, or many times, we don't agree on that faith. So we also have our own internal conflicts, isn't it?
As Christians, isn't it?
As Christians.
I was actually almost going to get there as well.
Exactly.
Yes.
And as Muslims, that's when we talk about inter. It's my faith and the other faith. You understand? So what do we say as Christians or as Muslims? We need to put our house in order. We need to be at peace with one another. So sometimes you might be saying, Christianity, Muslim, no. But then why can't you start with yourself? Peace begins with me before I reach out and start accusing that other religion. Because many times it's like my religion, even when we talk about from the intra point of view, Catholics may feel like we are the superior. You know, we come from the Pope, and Anglicans, and then today you have a lot of evangelical churches. You know, this was not there. The world is changing. We're becoming many things dynamic. How do we live with one another? Because this religious conflict must not necessarily be caused between Christians and Muslims and Judaism and Buddhism. It can also start at our angle. Look at what happened in Mombasa with the Kilifi, the Shakahola. You know, this was an internal, you know, it was now Christianity being put on the spot, isn't it? And you can see the conflict and the strife that has brought. People have died, you know, families have been disintegrated and all that. So what can we do? And what is Procmura and other faith-based organizations or interfaith organizations doing about it?
Yes. Looking at it from outside, the bigger challenge is that there are people who identify as their religion. You see that? Like, I am a Muslim, so my individuality is of Muslim faith. And the people who strongly identify as Christians, so their individuality, their beliefs, their personal self is essentially a Christian. Does it become difficult to remove individuality from a religion? That this is something that you believe in. It's not you. That this is what you believe in. It's your religion. But there's a separate piece of you that is just the individual without the religion. How have you been able to achieve that? Because that is where conflicts begin, where you find people saying, oh, this Muslims, or this Christians, or this church, or that church. Then all of a sudden now we even have issues of radicalization right within the religion. Yes.
So from where we sit as a Procmura, one of the things that we first of all do as an organization is we have invested in human resource so that our personnel, our pastors, and when I talk about human resource, I'm not talking about a HR department full of all these other people. It is, you know, a place where you have religious leaders, pastors, theologians, and all that. And so we ensure that they get training, what we call Islam and Christian-Muslim relations, so that they can begin to understand what that is before going out.
I say that.
You need to be informed.
Understand that religion.
Understand the other religion just as much as you understand your religion. Because if you don't have an understanding of the other religion, number one, you'll make those, you know, accusations and all that. So the people that can be able to do this for us are the church leaders from the Christian side. And because Procmura is a Christian organization, we don't attempt to train Muslims about their religion. But you've said something very important, the question of identity. Because all the time, the first thing is identity. We identify ourselves with religion. And Africa is a religious and a very cultural continent. We cannot part from that. But then we keep using this analogy. For example, when you talk about religion, you are an African and you move out of Africa and you're going to the US. You land at an airport. What identity are you given? If you land in Heathrow, London, anywhere, how will they identify you? It will be this African. Before they go to know that you're a Christian, you're a Muslim, unless maybe it's the attire, but the first thing that identifies you is your Africanness. So it becomes very difficult when you're talking about how do I separate my identity, my individual identity. And this is what we are trying to do as Procmura, so that people look beyond themselves. You look at yourselves as all of us. So my first identity is, my name is Joy. I'm an African, I am a Kenyan, I'm a Christian. So when you start understanding that division, then you'll know. And we make it in such a way that you are sensitive. You need to be sensitive to the other.
Yes.
If you are not sensitive, you don't have that sensitivity, you'll always, not know how to relate. So if you are cautious about the other and you want to communicate with the other person, how do I address you? From now we are having this discussion, and yes, we bring Christians and Muslims together. But as an organization, what we try to tell Christians is also be aware. How do I relate? If I am here, for example, as Procmora, we have meetings and conversations and workshops where we bring Christians and Muslims together. And as a Christian organization, we say prayer. And so we allow a Christian to open with prayer, a Muslim to open with prayer, and the other way around when we are closing. So you see, you start having that tolerance, that mutual respect. It doesn't have to be like I'm questioning, like Muslims will pray in Arabic, for example.
Exactly.
You may not understand, but you have faith, isn't it, in
whatever
God?
It is that they're praying is essentially for the better, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the relationship building is very key for us, and the understanding of one another.
Here's where the challenge begins, Joy, and will tell us exactly where there's a challenge that you face.
Yeah.
That there's this question of true religion, that people follow a particular religion because they believe and they've been taught, they've been raised knowing that this is the true religion, where the practices of the other faiths are considered not okay. That is not religion. I'll give you an example.
Sure.
I am a Christian.
Yeah.
There are things that have been taught to follow as a Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes.
And I do know now that myself, maybe I should be a member of Procmora, so that I also get educated, that there are things that are right, that our religion is true. There are books that have been written to defend the religion, saying that this is the right religion, not the rest of them. How is that a challenge? Do you meet this challenge that what you have to now do is to re-educate that there's no true religion, it's your religion. Believe it.
Yeah. We meet that challenge all the time, and we have been meeting it over the last 60 years with different groups. And also, as a result of that, one of our key programs, again, apart from capacity building for religious leaders, is we have a program called Freedom of Religion or Belief, FOB. And when you talk about my religion being that the religion, because you want to convince me about either my religion, my Bible tells me this, my Quran tells me this. But the argument is here. None of those, both books, promote killing, promote conflict. None of them. It is human beings who have gone round, and we call this misinterpretation of religious texts, for example. Because none of the religions, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, promotes conflict.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. None of those two.
Regardless of the interpretation that is getting popularized outside here.
Exactly. And that is why religious leaders or faith-based actors have a lot of work. And for us, that's why, again, we are targeting those religious leaders, those youth leaders in universities, those women who are the grassroots, to understand what does it mean to be at peace. And maybe we are going to come to that, because this is indeed the Peace Week.
Yes.
This is the week where we say as individuals, what have we been doing to promote peace as opposed to, bring war and injustices? How can we use ourselves as religious? And a religious leader may not necessarily be that pastor. I am not a theologian. But having worked with a religious organization, I begin to understand the importance of peace building. There are people who are doing peace work, but they are not necessarily religious leaders. United Nations, peacekeeping forces and all that, the approaches are just different.
Yes.
But then how do we live at peace with one another? Because that is the focus of Procmura and other organizations, promoting peace, getting communities to understand. Just like you're saying, if we are not careful, today, again, we are here in studio, and the media has been used as well to, promote conflict. How do we report it? How sensitive are we on what we are talking about? So we have different levels, and we are different actors in the field. But then we need to do a lot of advocacy. We need to do a lot of teaching. We need to create a culture. If you talk about Islam again, we say, or most of us look at Islam as a culture of peace. It's a way of life. That is what they say. Because you wake up and all the time you are at peace, greeting, looking out for one another. That's a culture of peace.
Yeah.
So the question then becomes, how do we promote that culture? How do we live it? Because the more we promote that culture, the more we are going to, even if not eradicate, reduce the levels of conflicts in our communities.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Since we have 5 minutes for this conversation, I just want us to go through a couple of these issues as quick as we can.
Yeah.
This week is International Peace Week, isn't it?
Yes.
In respect to faith, Joy, what can I do to contribute to this week in respect to what you're trying to achieve at Procmura?
You can begin with yourself by saying, I'm an ambassador of peace. Everybody can be an ambassador of peace. Yes. You can take small actions, even at the family level. Maybe you have been in conflict, you can try to reach out. And why we say that peace begins with you is that many times we feel that if I am the one who is aggrieved, I should not, the person who is at war with me should be the one looking for me. Why not reverse that? Why not reach out to your neighbor? Why not care and understand how are they going on? That's an action for peace. Why not, you have a phone, why can't you send peace messages to your family, your friends? Why can't you talk to your child at the family level that when you go to school, don't be violent, don't get into fights, don't do this and that. So we play it at very different levels. I could have a t-shirt, I stand for peace. Someone else may be wondering, what does it mean to be a peace ambassador? Yes. So we can teach one another at a very basic way, and that's what the International Peace Week calls us to do. Yes. When the bell went off last week at the assembly, it was a call for peace. It was a call for action for those faith actors, for peace actors in different constituencies to showcase, because peace is showcased by the different practices that we practice. How do I, show peace to my neighbor? As an institution, as an organization, as a family person, as a teacher, many people don't even know about the Peace Week. So how do you, as even the media you are talking about, promote this? Because at that grassroots level in our villages, I want to be so sure that even growing up, I myself did not know, but then as the UN and other global bodies started recognizing this, they made them, public advocacy holidays or something like that, so that they know that it's not only the UN that can be able to keep peace everywhere. They need our support. They need us to rally with them. They need us to run with them. They need us to create awareness. Yes. They need the communities, the youth especially, who are the leaders of tomorrow, to be on the forefront so that they can promote peace.
Pretty much. Take a minute. These are two questions that my producer tells me that, my director tells me that we got to get out of time, get out of the studio, sorry. there's an event that is supposed to mark the International Peace Week. How can I be a part and parcel of it?
Yeah.
And for those who want to support Procmura, how can they log on and support you? 1 minute.
So we are having an Amani Peace Gala, which means peace,
Yes.
at Procmura in Westlands, where we are going to be bringing different peace actors in the country, both continental, national and all that, to come and celebrate the Peace Week with us by showcasing what they have been doing. So the general public can join in. We have a Twitter, Facebook and all that, so that you can also be an active peace ambassador. You can also join and become a Procmura member, so that in your own individual way, you can be able to support radio campaigns, peace campaigns, and all that that is happening during this colorful week. So I invite everyone, peace actors who are out there, come and join others, so that you can also be able to say what you have been doing across the country and the continent.
The biggest takeaway from Joy, if you didn't get anything that she was saying this morning, is that this week, being an International Peace Week, what are you doing on a personal level to also be part and parcel of this conversation of achieving peace in the country and in Africa as a whole? Guess what? We didn't have more time. We've just scratched the tip of the iceberg. But guess what? Maybe we're going to be part and parcel of that International Week celebration there. We'll have better and bigger conversations, and also get to ask more questions to Procmura on exactly what they've been able to achieve and observe within the country and in the rest of the region, in as much as achieving peace within faiths is concerned. Take online at Lookuptv across all your social media platforms. I am at Kia Gesimba. Any other question that you may have, even participating on that International Week, you don't know what to do, talk to us. We will talk right back to them. Good morning. Tomorrow is another good day for another session. Joy, thank you very much for coming. Anytime. All right.
Thank you. That was tough.